Greetings, everybody, from West Virginia, USA. It's Monday, July 27, 2026, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's around 88 degrees Fahrenheit. What's that, around 30 degrees Celsius, ballpark in that area. It's been pretty blooming hot out here today, and I'm all sweated up. Got my heat going on. I had to have my hat on to keep the sun out of there, so I got hat hair going on. And I thought, should I go inside and spruce up a little bit, because I knew I wanted to do this video. And I got to thinking, no, we'll just shoot it as is. And what should I do? Should I have my hat on, or should I have my hat off? Now, when I'm out there in the sun, it's a lot cooler to have my hat on. But in here, I'm catching a little bit of the breeze. It feels kind of good. So I think I'm going to leave that off. So I'm just going to put that over here. And thank you for tuning in if you found this video. And today's video is going to be focused on like a laser beam. Yeah. But it's expressly for and to the great, wonderful people of Greenland. So, Greenland, you've been heavy on my mind my whole life. I've tried to do a couple videos on this subject in the past. Maybe if you're one of the 2 or 3 that saw those videos, yeah, that many, thank you for finding them. So this could be a little bit of a repeat of that, what I talked about before. But lots, the world keeps turning and the clock keeps ticking and you can't stop time. So my thoughts have changed a little bit. And if you're watching this, don't matter where you are on the planet, and you know anybody that has anything to do with Greenland, or even better, Greenlanders themselves, please like, forward, and subscribe, whatever those guys talk about, and forward this to somebody in Greenland. Because I'm going to pour my heart and soul out in this video in the next couple minutes. And what I'm about to say is 100% my own personal thoughts and feelings that have been swirling around in this head ever since I was a little itty whippersnapper. And that's all they are. And Greenlanders, if you're watching this, thank you for tuning in. I want you to know that I do not work for the government. I have not been coached or influenced. Everything that I'm going to say is truly and sincerely from the heart, with your best interest in my mind. I'm trying to think, if I was a Greenlander, what would I want to hear some old grandpa from West Virginia, USA, and what could he possibly say that would be relevant to change my opinions and thoughts and that? And am I trying to stick my nose into your business? And the answer to that, I hope, comes across as absolutely not. I honor and respect the decisions of what's going on in Greenland, should 100% be made by and for the people of Greenland. And despite what you hear on the news, which I've come to despise anymore, when they talk about fake news, I don't know if it's fake, but it sure has been politicized and sensationalized and agenda driven. And therefore I call it the views, not the news, because they're pushing their viewpoint and their agenda. And whatever you're done watching, whatever they want you to see, they're hoping that you go away with an opinion that could be 100% opposite of what the real truth really is. And I believe, it's just my opinion, as a proud American, a proud West Virginian, you know, no country on this planet, and I believe this sincerely in my heart, not one single planet on this, or country on this entire planet, will ever, never match what the United States of America is, what has been, and will be forever and into the future. This is the most incredible, awesome country of all time. And that's a true statement. It really is. And I've come to conclude, I've had a blessed, blessed life. I want you to know that. But I've come to the conclusion that the reason why the United States gets bad publicity sometimes, and bad press, and that, you know what, in my opinion, the reason why is, it's jealousy. Yeah, that's the word. I finally came to that conclusion. They're jealous because they're jealous of what the United States is and what we are and what we represent, and they don't have that, but we do. So therefore they're jealous. So Greenland, you got a lot going on in your country, the whole world. You know, when I was growing up, I think most people never gave Greenland a passing thought throughout their day, and a lot of them might not even know where Greenland was on the map if you had a globe in that, but if you paid attention in geography class, you might know where it is. But as you spin the globe, and you know, I got a globe in the house, I got an atlas, and anybody who's watching one of these devices, you got Google Map, you can find out where Greenland is on the planet. What does it say right underneath Greenland? Denmark. Yeah. Greenland is a possession, a territory of Denmark. And been that way for several hundred years. And prior to that, founded by the Vikings. And that's where I come in. I have a connection to that story, and I'm going to share it with you here in a minute. But so that's why Greenland's been on my mind my whole life. And now, seems like the whole world is laser focused on Greenland. You know, what's going on in Greenland? The Russians, of course, are very interested. China, all of Europe. You know, I saw the Prime Minister of Spain, you know, kind of in his threatening talk about United States and Mr. Trump, President Trump, and that, you know, keep our nose out of Greenland. Well, we're going to talk about that too, because I want to share a story that just happened to me just almost a year ago from right this very day. A year ago today, I was, and my two sons, we were over in Sweden and Denmark and Finland, and went up into the Arctic, and, you know, out visiting our relatives and doing the Heritage Trail. You know, I'm very proud to be a Viking. I'm very proud to be a Sami. Yeah. Believe it or not, there's a lot of Nordic, Scandinavian, Sami, as well as everybody else. We are the melting pot of the entire planet. A lot of times there's more, whatever nationality or heritage you come from, living here in America there are in the homeland. Yeah, or equal to. And that's why we love everybody, because it doesn't matter where you are on the planet, your people live here. Like I said, my next door neighbor over here is from Brazil. I got neighbors over here from Iran. I got from everywhere on the planet, every continent, every race, religion, color, creed, they live right here. And despite what you see on the news, we live in peace and harmony. You know, there's over 400 homes in this development that I live in. Listen how peaceful and quiet it is. Everybody's out doing what they're doing. The moms and dads are out working their jobs. School's off for summer right now. Usually there'd be a little more kids out here playing, but it's been pretty hot. They're probably inside playing their video games. You know, they didn't have none of that when I was growing up. We'd be outside here playing or swimming or out in the woods. But this is just one of maybe 100 developments like this here in Berkeley County, West Virginia, and throughout the entire state. And we all live in peace and harmony. This is real. This is the real America. And it doesn't matter in the inner cities, out in the suburbs, out in the prairies, up in the mountains, from sea to shining sea. It's the same story. I've been in every single state in the United States except for one. I haven't been to Hawaii. And I can tell you it's the exact same thing wherever you may be. There's different people, have different cultures. They may think differently. They may be different, agendas and that. But don't doubt for a second that every single one of us are as patriotic and will fight to defend that flag that I have flying right there in my front yard to the last one of us. Yeah. And that's what's so unique about the United States of America. So I want to talk about the history a little bit. I want to talk about the present and the future and how this is going to impact you, Greenland and Greenlanders. And you're sitting on a golden, golden opportunity. And do you realize how amazing and awesome that is? And do I have an agenda? Well, obviously yes, or I wouldn't be doing this video, but I think it's a good one. And I hope and pray that no matter what happens, that it's you, Greenlanders, who determine your own destiny and fate and what the future holds in store for you. So let's get going. And I want to go all the way back to the very beginning, because just like now Greenland is a territory subject of the king or queen of Denmark, likewise, that's the exact same MO, the same story of the United States. The 13 original colonies located up and down the eastern seaboard on the Atlantic Ocean side, just south of Greenland, subjects to the King of England. But every single country in Europe, they were all big on colonizing, and they were all in on the gig, and they were the biggest colonizers that ever been on the entire planet. And once they figured out that the earth wasn't flat and you weren't going to fall off the edge, and don't matter where you go, you'll end up, if you keep going, you can end up right back where you started from, because it's one big circle. And I wonder why it took so long for them to figure it out. When you look up and you see the moon every day, night, and yeah, it isn't a flat moon. It's a pretty round ball to me. So anyways, they figured that out. And the kings and queens of Europe, every single country, Spain, Portugal, Holland, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Europe, France, they're all in on it. You know what New York was called before it was New York? New Amsterdam. Yeah. Then whatever reason, the Brits kicked them out and planted their flag there and said, now this is New York. Probably named after York, England, you think? Probably so. They sent their explorers out with their boats with a big bucket of flag, and they said, you guys go out and you just take your flag wherever you land, you spike that down on the ground, and you declare that as now part of our territory, our country. This is our territory. And, you know, look at Spain, all of South America and Central America and over in the Philippines and on and on and on. And same with Portugal. You know, my neighbor there, she speaks Portuguese because they had Brazil before they got their independence. And I know down in Mozambique and Angola and that was Portuguese. And so you're in Spain, they were everywhere. And Florida, look at Florida, for like 300 years, territory of Spain before we acquired Florida from Spain. When they decided that, you know what, the 13 colonies, we don't want to be subjects to the king anymore. It was good until it wasn't good, and now we want our independence. Can you imagine the chaos? And it would just been a disaster if there would have been 13 individual, uniquely different sovereign countries. And now there's 50 stars on that flag. Can you imagine if there are 50 independent sovereign nations here in North America, along with Canada and who knows what else? It would have been disaster. But they had the brilliant foresight to say, you know what? We were proud of our territory, but we'd be better off united. And it didn't matter if you're the biggest state or the smallest state. Little Rhode Island, which is still to this very day the very smallest state in the 50 United States that we have today, and about 15 territories throughout the world. We all benefit from one another. We help them, they help us, and this what made this the greatest country that's ever been. And when we declared our independence and they wrote that Declaration of Independence and they sent a copy to the king over in England, I don't know if they still have their copy or not. I've seen one of the original copies in Independence Hall in Philadelphia. If you're ever there, go in there and see it. I'm sure there's one in the Smithsonian here in Washington. You know, our National Archives, one of the greatest museums on the planet. When the King of England got his Declaration of Independence and he's reading that, I can't imagine what he did. Did he tear it up and throw it in the wastebasket? Throw it in the fireplace? Or do they still have it to this day? I'd have to research that, but it didn't make him very happy. And he told his leaders, his military people and the naval and all them, they said, you get back over there to the colonies. That's what they referred us to as the colonies. And you give them guys a good spanking, this ain't going to happen. There's no way. That's our land. That's our territory. They will be ours and squash this rebellion right now. Well, thank God Almighty we were led by a brilliant, brilliant George Washington. He was the commander of the General George Washington of the Continental Army. And it didn't matter if you were a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, farmer, whatever. If you could walk and carry a gun, we need you in the army. And didn't they defeat the greatest military power on the entire planet at that time? And the Brits were beside themselves. They were dumbfounded. How in the world did we allow this to happen? And they put their tails between their legs and got on their boats and went back to the homeland. But they couldn't accept the fact that they lost that war. And they didn't give us the respect that was due. They still referred to us as the colonies. But the colonies, now the United States of America, they took off like a rocket. You know, it's like a little kid going out in his backyard and he's got his little toy rocket and he lights the match and the fuse and pew, that thing goes off. I can remember doing that when I was a kid. Where did it go? We thought it went up into outer space, but pretty soon it came back down. And that's what happened to this country. It took off like a rocket, and it was nonstop growth, both economically, militarily, politically, socially, and we just took off. And people from all over the world, they were surely watching what's going on in America, and they said, you know what? We went in on that gig. And they just kept coming and coming and coming, and the country kept growing and growing and growing. And what did England do? They were so jealous, and they couldn't still get over the fact that they had lost. And they said, you know what? We shouldn't have let that happen back then. And what'd they do? They attacked us again. Less than 50 years after our independence. The War of 1812. And didn't they come over here? All the fighting was over here. We didn't go over there and fight them over there. They came over here, burnt the White House to the ground and the U.S. Capitol building. Can you believe that? Do you think that you would be upset if someone came in and torched and burned down all your Capitol buildings and government buildings? Yeah, you'd be darn tootin', spanking, hot and mad. But didn't we go and defeat them again? And I think that's when Britain finally said, whoa, we get it. And we had the right to be very, very angry with Britain. In fact, that's when our Star-Spangled Banner was written during that war, the War of 1812, at Fort McHenry, just an hour and a half from where I'm sitting right now. I've been there. I've seen the original flag. That Francis Scott Key, who I've stood on his gravesite, buried about 45 minutes from my house. Great patriot. And I've had people tell me to my face that our U.S. national anthem is a horrible song. It's a warmonger song, talking about the rockets' red glare and bombs bursting in air. And I said, you couldn't be further from the truth. You need to understand what that song is all about. And once you do, you'll get it. And you say, now I understand why Americans are so patriotic. Will fight to defend that flag to the day they die. So I'm going to encourage you to watch a little short YouTube video, The Star-Spangled Banner as you've never heard it before. I'll put a link to it in the descriptions here. You can find it on YouTube. Please watch that video. It'll bring a tear to your eye and you'll say, now I get it. I understand why. And that is a brilliant, brilliant song. Probably the best national anthem on the planet. Everybody has pride in their national anthem, and that's the way it should be. But again, I think it's the best. Please listen to that video, The Star-Spangled Banner as you've never heard it before. Okay, with that basis, if you watch that and you know what's happened in this country, you know, I'm so grateful again that the World Cup just finished up. Spain won the World Cup. Beat, was it Argentina or was it Venezuela? Argentina. But I was watching the YouTube videos during the World Cup. You know, that goes on for like 30 days. It's a huge, huge event. We always thought the Super Bowl was a big, big event, but the World Cup is bigger. And people all over the planet watch that. And I'm glad they did. Because if you watch the YouTube videos and the spectators and the fans from every country that participated in that, I think they came back with a whole different view of what the United States is and all about. A lot of them said, you know what? We were scared and afraid to come because of everything that we hear on TV and the views saying that, watch your back. And when you see that stuff on TV and you see protesters, a rioter, and you have the right to protest in this country. That's one of the things that's so great about this country. But think about this. Whenever you see something on TV, there's usually 10, 15. I've seen people out there protesting our national reflecting pool, and I have a video on that if you want to see that. It's about, when you look into the reflecting pool, you might see yourself and reflect on that of what's going on before you make an opinion or say something. I saw one person. She was dressed up in a frog costume, like a Halloween costume, and she's out there talking about the waste of the money and calling it a shame that that money could have been used for so many different things. And she called it the frog pond, and that's why she was dressed up in the frog. And I've seen a lot of green algae covered frog ponds, especially when you live out in the countryside and farms and all that stuff. And I'm super, super proud that our president wants to clean up Washington and make it the beautiful city that it is, and a showpiece to the world and all the people who come from all over the world to see our U.S. Capitol. And why wouldn't you want that? You would want that in your own country, and we want that here in our country. And do you think he was disappointed after doing all that in just weeks? Of course he was. Who wouldn't be? But you know what? He just didn't sit there and say, we tried. No. He said, get that thing fixed and get it fixed and get it fixed right. So they're working on it. Trust me, they're working on it to make it the beautiful, beautiful reflecting pool it is. It has its problems. It's only 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep of water, and it's been 90 degrees out here today, and we've had 100-degree days. Yeah, that's a battle to keep the algae from growing. But they're going to figure it out. They will. One of the things they don't fail to tell you, they say Donald Trump and that frog lady, God bless her, she's out there, doing her right, but she gets national attention and exposure. And that's what makes me upset, because it doesn't reflect the real, true opinion of Americans. That's her opinion, and she has the right to that opinion. But she's talking about the waste of money. It could be used for other things. Well, how come she didn't say that when President Barack Obama had the reflection pool chain link fenced off for 2 years and spent, $37 million? And when they finished the project was just as bad as when they started. Yeah, but they don't mention that on the news. Nope. So when you see any of these events, think about this. There's 350 million Americans. And if you see somebody protesting in any city, which they have the right to do, and they say, look what's going on, let's say there's 1,000 people or 10,000 people. That's a huge, huge, big protest. Or 50,000 people. Wow. Let's bump it up to 100,000 people. That would be massive. And it gets worldwide attention. Well, do the math. If you remember how to do it without using your phone or calculator, if you divided 100,000 people by 350 million people, Americans, that's less than 0.0001% of the population. So that means 99.99% of Americans, they're not out there protesting. They're not doing that kind of stuff. They're living their lives and true patriots of this country. That's the reality. That's what this country is all about. And that's what all the people who came to the World Cup, they saw that for themselves. I saw that one husband and wife, they're from England, and was touring around America, and they said, and they got a YouTube channel out there now. You can find it, you can see it. I apologize, I forget your name. Jamie, I think, is the wife, and I can't remember. They're out motoring all around the U.S., and they said, this is beautiful. We've been lied to our whole life as to, what we thought America was all about. And they said, we want to move to America. We want to get in on that. And we want you to come. And we want the whole world. You're welcome to come. But if you come, you have to come legally, just like my family did, and hundreds of millions of other families that make this country as great as it is. We want you to come, and you're welcome to come, but you can't just walk across the border undeclared and undocumented, and people not knowing who you are, where you're going, what your agenda is. You wouldn't want that in your country, and we don't want it here. And thank God Almighty, those days are over. Yeah, there are consequences for doing that. Just like if I came to your country undocumented, and I'd be an illegal alien even in my own homeland. Yep. Okay. Greenland. You need to know that history about the United States. I'm only going to highlight just a couple states because there's 50 of them. We don't have time, and I apologize. This is getting kind of windy already. I want to talk about Louisiana. We bought Louisiana and a big chunk of land, which now incorporates several states, probably Alabama and Mississippi and maybe some parts of Tennessee and Arkansas. It was up the Mississippi River Delta, and we bought that from France. It's called the Louisiana Purchase. And to show you how each state is uniquely different, Louisiana is the only state in the United States that still to this day operates under I think it's called Napoleonic law, where let's say you go out and commit a crime, or you're speeding in your car and a police officer turns a siren on, pulls you over, and you get a ticket. Well, in Louisiana, you're guilty. That's why he gave you the ticket. And you have the right to go to court and try to prove your innocence if you are innocent. But you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. Whereas in all the other states, we operate under Magna Carta law, left over from the old British Magna Carta. And you get arrested, you're innocent until the government proves you to be guilty. So that's how a little bit of difference, but that's what's unique about this country. Each state is different. In fact, in Louisiana, they have parishes down there. In all the other states, we have counties. I live in Berkeley County. If this was under their laws, this would be called Berkeley Parish. And I think, do they still have that in Quebec? I think they probably do. Quebec is all French. Yeah, they probably do. I don't know. I worked in Quebec. So, I want to talk about Oklahoma. When you look at the old maps of North America back in the 1800s, and as the country was growing and out west and that, and you see what is now Oklahoma, what did it say on those old maps? Indian Territory. That's how that was on those maps. And today, it's the great state of Oklahoma. But what does Oklahoma represent? Well, in their native tongue, for the people in that area, Okla means red, and Homa is man, red man. So it makes sense when you put it together. And what does it say on the license plates of Oklahoma on the bottom? Native Americans. How cool is that? I think that's really cool. And they're proud of their heritage and their uniqueness, as every territory and state is. And that's the way it should be, and that's the way it is. Do you think West Virginians aren't proud to be West Virginians and be mountaineers and hillbillies? You can call us whatever you want. There, you can't go anywhere on the planet and people don't know our new state song, Country Roads. Have you ever heard that song? Country roads take me home to the place that I belong, West Virginia, almost heaven. Yeah. I've been all around the world, and people everywhere know that song. And we sing that song any chance we get. High school events, end of sports games, state fairs, just birthday parties. Brings a tear to your eye when you sing that song. We're so proud to be West Virginians, but we're super proud to be American. I want to talk about Texas. You know, think about this. The United States is growing, expanding from the East Coast, heading towards the West Coast. Texas, they used to be a territory also. They were part of Mexico. And for whatever reason, they decided, you know what, we don't want to be part of Mexico anymore. And they fought for and won their independence, and they became their own independent sovereign country, the Republic of Texas. And the same flag that flies over Texas today is the same flag when they were the Republic of Texas, the Lone Star State, we call it now. And just think about this. If Texas was still an independent sovereign state, they got it all. They got huge, vast reserves of minerals, oil, farmland. They're probably the biggest cattle producing state in the entire United States. They got seaports. They got everything. They would rank in the top 10 most prosperous GDP countries on the entire planet. But yet, after they were their own independent sovereign country for many years, they said, you know what? We like what we see over there. And we think we would be better off to join the family and be one of them than to continue on being our own independent sovereign country. So that's what they did. Thank you, Texas, for being so brave and having the foresight and to step up and come into the family. We all benefit from Texas, and they benefit from us. It's been a win-win-win situation for everybody. Thank you, Texas. You know, I could mention, and I am going to mention Alaska. Think about this. Think how huge and massive Russia is. And I'm not talking in the Soviet Union days. I'm just talking right now today. I still think Russia is the biggest country on the entire planet. In the United States, we have 4 time zones from the East Coast to the West Coast, from New York to Los Angeles. In Russia, I think, is it 13 or is it 15? It's one of them two. 13 or 15. Well, we'll call it 13. 13 time zones from one end of the country to the other. Wow, that's huge. And Russia used to be, not now, they used to be in North America. Yep, they owned Alaska. So, they, in the 1800s, I don't know why, maybe they came on some hard times or something like that, and they said, you know what, we need to raise some money, so let's put Alaska up for sale. And so they put Alaska up for sale, and ding, 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 our U.S. Secretary of State, William Seward, he said, you know what, we'll buy Alaska. And there were a lot of Americans that were opposed to that. They said, what in the world do we want that big frozen hunk of ice for? Russia doesn't want it. Why in the world would we want it? And they called it Seward's folly, that he's crazy in the head for wanting to buy Alaska. Well, thank God Almighty that he bought Alaska. Alaska has been such a strategic, wonderful asset for the United States, and I have many friends that live in Alaska. I've been to Alaska. Like I said, I've been to all the states, and I know for a fact that Alaska and the Alaskan people, you don't have to believe me, ask them. They're happy and they're better off, and they're super, super glad that they're not part of not just Russia, but they probably be part of Siberia. That it was a great, great benefit for them, and it sure has been for us. Yeah, thank you, Alaska. Now our biggest state in it out of all the 50. And to show you how different each state is, like here in West Virginia, I pay my local county tax, school tax, West Virginia state income tax. If you're privileged enough to make income, then you got to pay the income tax and federal tax. Everybody who's an American citizen pays federal tax. But Alaska, because they're sitting on so much wealth and they got all that oil up there, they don't have state income tax. In fact, Alaskans, if you're a citizen of Alaska, you get a refund check every year. Your share of the prosperity and the profits of all the oil and minerals that they have in there. And that's a pretty good thing. There's a lot of people that moved to Alaska just for that reason. But you have to live there for, 5 years, so they know you're committed. Then you qualify, and you too will get that refund check every year. So, Greenland, back to you guys. I wanted you to know this because if you would ever come into the family, you can't and you don't want to jump from one fry pan into another fry pan without having your eyes wide open. I got to stretch these wide open. My grandma always said, you got the Sami eyes. I said, what are the Sami eyes, Grandma? When I was a little kid. She goes, it looks like you're squinting all the time. I said, well, why is that? She says, well, when you live up in the Arctic, and this there our people have for 10,000 years, and the wind is howling and the snow is blowing, and she says, you got to squint your eyes or you get blinded by the snow. And after so many years, that's just the way our eyes are. So I'm proud to have the Sami eyes. Thank you, Grandma, for passing on the Sami eyes to me. I'm so proud to be a Sami. Right, I'm still recovering from my shoulder surgery. I got a brand new shoulder put in here. I'm getting a brand new shoulder put in here. I was supposed to have that surgery 2 weeks ago, but last minute it got canceled. But it'll happen here real quick. And thank God I'll get that. But look at that. I wear the Sami flag every day. I'm so proud to be a Sami. I'm so proud to be a Viking. This is the Royal Swedish Crown here. And I'm super, super proud to be an American. And I'm going to tell you a story about that just happened to me a year ago, coming up in 2 weeks. A year ago this time, my two sons and I were over there in Sweden. I told you that. And I'm going to tell you what happened to me on our last night. So, Greenland. You have a massive choice sitting in your lap. From the way I understand it, I think you got, I'm going to call it 3 choices. Choice number 1, if you like the way things are going and have been going, and you want to remain subjects to the Queen or King of Denmark and you have to, be under their thumb. Everything's kumbaya, then God bless you. Just stay the course, and everything will be worked out. It'll be okay. You don't have to fear United States. We're not the conquering explorers like the Europeans were. We're not going to come there and spike our flag down there and just say this is now our territory. I don't think any American will stand for that, and that's not going to happen. And we have no history of ever doing that. We've never done that to any country where we're at. In fact, it's just the opposite. Look at Cuba. It was a former U.S. territory. We acquired Cuba during the Spanish-American War. It's like Puerto Rico, another American territory. I think they would have been much better off to had become a state, but for whatever reason they wanted to remain a territory. I think the tide is switching now, though. But I've been to Puerto Rico many times, and there's about 6.5 million people in Puerto Rico. Every one of them Americans. Same with Guam. Yep. Just look up Guam on Google and look how beautiful Guam is, and or any of our territories. The Philippines. A lot of people don't know that the Philippines were part of the U.S. for many years. We acquired the Philippines during the same time as Guam and Puerto Rico and Cuba, but just like Cuba wanted their independence, and we said, okay, you want to become independent? We'll make that happen, and we did. Didn't turn out the way what we thought and would hoped and wished it would have. And I'm saying the Cuban people themselves surely didn't think they'd be where they are today. And things could happen in Cuba, and they are happening in Cuba. That's to be determined. But who knows what the future holds in store for Cuba. They could be coming back into the family. That's what I'm thinking. But the Philippines, they wanted their independence. And we said, okay, that can happen. But that got held up mainly because of World War I and World War II. So right after World War II got finished up, they finally got their independence. In fact, their Independence Day is the same as ours, the 4th of July of 1947, I believe. Is it 46 or 40? I think 47. And to this very day, the Philippines have been great allies, great partners, great friends. Thank you, Philippines, for continuing to remain such wonderful, great partners and friends. Yep. But now they're their own independent, sovereign country. They've had their struggles like everybody else, but they're doing pretty good. And they're super proud to be Filipinos. So, Greenland, you can continue on to be part of Denmark. And our maps will still say Denmark underneath there. So I'm going to share with you the story that happened to me when I was over in Helsingborg, Sweden, our last night. We had just a fantastic, wonderful, wonderful trip. It's so beautiful. I'm so proud to be Viking. I'm so proud to be Swedish. So proud to be Sami. We spent 3 days up in the Arctic. And in fact, I got to premise this story with, when we crossed, we were going from Luleå and Ronio and up towards Kiruna. And when you come up to where the Arctic Circle is, there's no line painted across the highway, but there's a big monument there on the right. And it's a big stainless steel globe of the world. And it's kind of tilted so that you're looking down at it from the North Pole, which is the Arctic. And surrounding this big globe, they have flagpoles with all the flags of the countries that are in the Arctic. And of course, we stopped to get our picture taken in front of it and admired how beautiful it is. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking to myself, and so all the flags are up there, and I'm thinking, it wasn't what I expected. Let's just put it that way. Because what are the flags of all the countries in the Arctic? You had Russia, Finland, Sweden, Norway. I'm going to skip one. Iceland, Canada, United States. All those flags. What flag did I skip? Time's up. What I was expecting to see up there was the Danish flag. Denmark. Nope. It was the Greenland flag. And I thought, wow, how cool is that? And I was so happy to see that flag flying up there instead of the Danish flag. And I said, yep, that's pretty cool. So that thought was up in my head. So we continued on with our travels and all through there, and we went down, and that's another whole video, too long to get into here, but our last night, and I got relatives going back thousands and thousands of years, and it's well documented. Last night we're in Helsingborg, Sweden, because we're catching the ferry the next morning. Just a real short ride right across the waters there, and we're in Copenhagen and going back to Copenhagen airport and fly back home to Philadelphia. It was a beautiful evening. We're sitting at this restaurant, and they had an outdoor patio just like I'm sitting right here. Had about 10 or 12 tables out there, and it was a beautiful night. And it was a warm night that night, so I had a short sleeve shirt on. And a gentleman and his wife were sitting right beside me, just as close as this is right here. You know, his table's beside me. And I noticed him, kept looking over at me. And I know what he was looking at. He was looking at this, you know. He was looking at this statue, or this tattoo, trying to figure out, you know, who is this guy I'm sitting beside? Yep, the Royal Swedish Crown, American flag, and on it. Finally, after a bit, he says to me, "Excuse me, sir." And I said, "Yes." He says, "Are you an American?" I don't know how he figured that out. And I said, "Well, yes, sir, I am." "What do you think about Donald Trump wanting to buy Greenland?" "Greenland isn't for sale. Greenland is ours, and it's not for sale." I'm thinking, whoa. I guess this guy must be Danish. And I have a lot of relatives that live in Denmark. Who knows? He could even be one of them. But I could see he was very passionate about this. And I didn't want to get into no political discussions about it. But in my head, I was thinking about what I just saw at the Arctic Circle Monument. And I said to him, I said, "Sir," I said, "don't you think whatever's going to happen in Greenland should be decided by and for the great, wonderful people of Greenland themselves? It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what I think. It matters, what do Greenlanders want? What do they want?" I stumped him. I don't think he was expecting that reaction from me. And I could see his wheels turning. He's thinking. He goes, yeah, you're probably absolutely right. It should be up to them, shouldn't it?" And I said, "I think so." So we left it at, we both agreed on that. And in defense of this guy, he was a very nice guy. We talked just a little bit more. And we parted with best wishes to you and good luck to Greenland, whatever happens. So I gotta pause. I got a call coming in there. I paused it, or I would stop my video. So Greenland. Option 1, stay the course. Continue on to be territory, possession of Denmark. Option 2, I know you have the right to declare your independence and become your own sovereign country, just like Iceland, your next door neighbor, who also was a Danish territory. And they declared their independence, and Denmark got over it. They're still good friends and trading partners, even though despite what you see on the news, that Iceland is considering joining the EU because of America and all that stuff. And I got a video on that too. You want to see what my opinion is on that? Watch that video. Because I told Iceland, you don't have nothing to fear from the U.S. We've been your best ally and friend. We're their largest trading partner, have been since that country is formed, and will be forever. And look at Keflavik Airport. You know, I've flown in and out of there. I've been to Iceland. I got my picture standing in front of my cousin, which I'm going to explain that story, high atop of the hill in Reykjavik. And we built Keflavik Airport. It was a U.S. Air Force base, used primarily in World War II. And when we were done with that, we gave it to Icelanders and said, here you are. This is your airport. We didn't stay. We didn't, force our way in there and say we want to maintain this. Nope. We're friends. We're partners. And they're in NATO, and they're great NATO partners. So thank you, Icelanders, for being such great allies and friends, and it'll continue that way. They have nothing to fear from us. Yeah. So that's option number 2. Follow the course of Iceland. But running your own independent sovereign country has huge, huge challenges. And I think about Greenland, you got a lot going for you. But the reality is we have 3 times as many people right here in Berkeley County, West Virginia, as you do in all of Greenland. And our economy here is booming. And I mean off the chart booming. New schools being built, new factories and industry moving in, housing starts like you can't imagine. And it's just incredible. And our GDP here in Berkeley County is probably 3 times higher than all of Greenland. And I'm thinking to myself, could we become our own independent sovereign country? And the answer to that question is absolutely no. No way. It would be such a backwards move. It'd be disaster. We benefit so much by being in the family and being part of all of what West Virginia is and all of what the United States is, united together, benefiting one from the other. And that's what's made this country so great and wonderful that it is. The EU will never, ever be able to compete with the United States. And if you want to see my opinion on that, you can watch my video on that too. The EU versus the US of A. There is no comparison. So that's all I'm going to say about that. You can watch the video and make the decision. And we love the EU, the people. Yeah, because that's who we are. Africans, 50 million in this country. Germans, 50 million in this country. Just think what the United States has done for Europe. And if it hadn't been for the United States, you all would probably be speaking German today. And we love the Germans. And that's why after each one of those wars, and even after the Brits came and attacked us the second time and burned our White House and the U.S. Capitol building to the ground, we're best friends because we're all the same people. Yeah. There's 50 million Germans living in the United States. There's 25 million French. And same with the Brits. And same with all the Nordic, Swedish, Sami. Yeah, they're living here. We got a lot of them living here. And we don't forget where our homeland and our heritage. You can be proud of your heritage, but we're super proud to be American. And don't test us on that. So I'm going to talk about the decision that my grandparents made to come to this country, and how what a huge choice that was, because that's option number 3 in Greenland. Option 2, become your own independent sovereign country. Option 3, you have an open door. You would be the envy of the entire planet. Everybody would be so jealous of what you have sitting on your plate right now, and you would be welcomed with open arms. We would love to have Greenland in the family. And the benefits that would come from that are beyond your wildest imagination and expectations. You would have all the rights and perks and benefits that I have, all my family has, all my relatives and friends, and all 350 million Americans. That's available to you right now, if that's the path you want to go down. So I'm going to wrap this up with talking about that real quick. You know, it's a privilege. I'm so grateful and thankful to be an American. But I honestly believe I'm privileged because of all the benefits that have come from that. You know, my grandfather, when he was 27 years old, he graduated from high school. He served 2 years in the Swedish Navy. Then he went to work on the railroads. And he finally came. Several of his friends and buddies had moved to America. He had been communicating with them. And they said, you gotta come, you gotta come. Man, it's just incredible, the opportunities here. We got jobs lined up for you if you want to come. So finally, at 27 years old, he's told his mom and dad that, you know what, I don't know, that Viking pioneer spirit kicked in. And he said, I'm going to move on. And he narrowed it down to 3 different choices. And those were the Faroe Islands, because he had cousins that lived in the Faroe Islands and they wanted him to come there. Iceland, he had cousins that lived in Iceland. In fact, my grandpa told me that everybody in Iceland's your cousin. So when I've been to Iceland, I call him. I said, hey, cousin, how you doing? Huh? And I said, well, my grandpa told me you're probably my cousin. So, and America was his 3rd choice. And the reason why I believe he ended up choosing America was because I told you he worked on the railroads. And there are no railroads in the Faroe Islands. There are no railroads in Iceland. But there are plenty of railroads in the United States. And as they were expanding and moving westward, and his buddy said, come, we need you, and we got a job for you right now. And that's what he ended up doing. And he moved, landed in New York, hopped on the trains, and went to Fargo, North Dakota. So there's more to that story, and I'll share that in another video. But it was a tremendous benefit and gain for my grandpa. He had his struggles when he started out. The Great Depression came. He lost everything. He got discouraged. He moved back to Sweden, and they lived there for 4 years. My grandma and my aunt and my dad. No, my dad, no. My aunt. My grandma was pregnant when they came back, and my dad was actually born here. So my dad was generation number 1. I'm generation number 2, American. Thank you, Grandpa, for bringing the family to America. I'm so grateful and have been so blessed by what the decision he made and the benefits that we've had and what it's meant for our family. My grandma, she was 16 years old when not her, she didn't even know where America was, but her parents made the decision for her. when she was 16. I've tried to wrap my head around this, and I don't know if I could do it. They had, she was one of 8 children. Her father died young, and her mother got remarried. And her father, my grandmother was a Bergman, and her mother was still young when her husband died in his 30s. I think he was 32. And she remarried and became a linguist and had 4 more children. Yep. So I've been there, stood on her gravesite. God bless her. Anyways, they said, Hulda, we're sending you to America. Huh? We feel you have a better future and opportunity than what we can provide for you here. You know, they lived out in the Arctic. They lived in the tents. As us Americans, we would call them teepees, but they're not teepees. And they lived there all year round, out in the, up in the Arctic. And she didn't want to come. The only word she knew in English was no. Pretty good word to know, huh? If you can't speak English. But she had an uncle who had already come over, one of her mother's brothers, and he agreed to sponsor her. And so they put her on the boat, shipped her over to New York where he met her, and then they too end up in Fargo, North Dakota, and that's where she met my grandpa, and they fell in love. And here I am today, along with my brothers, both my mother and father, God bless them, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful parents. Tell you more about them in future videos, but they were both born over 100 years ago. And my grandparents, what an incredible story and life they had. Oh yeah, one last thing I'm going to tell you about the last night in Sweden. See, my brain is wandering off all over the place, and I gotta, holy smokes, I gotta wrap this up. It's getting pretty windy. So that gentleman I told you that he saw my tattoo, and what do you think about Donald Trump and wanting to buy there? Why has Greenland been on my mind my whole life? According to the sagas that my grandpa and grandma used to tell us, and anybody who's Nordic, you know what the sagas are. And man, we couldn't wait to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house. We'd pile onto their laps and be sitting on the sofa and listen to the stories. And all my grandpa used to tell us about being Viking, and my grandma about living up in the Arctic, and we couldn't get enough of them. But one of the stories that my grandpa told us, and you know, I've lived long enough to know and prove to myself that these stories that he told us were absolutely true. Yep, and that's how history was passed down in families for generations. Well, one of the stories was that this gentleman by the name of, well, actually it wasn't a gentleman, this person by the name of Eric the Red. Have you ever heard of him? Yeah, that guy. He wasn't a very well-liked guy. He got in a lot of trouble. And he lived in Norway, just north of where my grandpa's village and where he lived up. My grandpa was in Hageness, just south of Helsingborg. Beautiful, beautiful village. And so this person, Eric the Red, he got himself into a lot of trouble. In Norway, they finally had it with him. He probably should have spent the rest of his life in prison. But for whatever reason, they cut him a break. But they said, you know what, Mr. Eric the Red, we've had it with you. Get in your boat. Take anything you want that's yours and get the heck out, and don't ever, never come back. You're not welcome here anymore. Get out. So off he goes. And where does he end up? Iceland. So he starts over again in Iceland. And he got married, and he had 3 children and 2 sons and a daughter. But he apparently didn't learn his lessons from his bad boy days in Iceland, Norway, And it didn't take Icelanders long enough to figure out that now we know why you got kicked out of Norway. And guess what? We don't want you either. So get back in your boat and get the heck out of here and don't ever come back. So off he goes. But he left his wife and his children there in Iceland. And they were actually raised up by a slave, but a highly educated slave. And he could speak several languages, and he passed them on to the children. And I'm going to talk about one of them in a minute. But Eric the Red and his little band of misfits, I don't know, 10 or 12 of them, now they're out in their little longboat, and they're out in the waters, and they're saying, we got to find this someplace quick, or winter's coming and we ain't going to survive. And finally they see some land, and they go ashore and set up a settlement and camp and try to survive the winter. And about half of them didn't make it, but Eric the Red was one of them who did. And so they said, you know what, we got to go back to Iceland and get some more supplies and try to talk some other people into coming back here to set up a settlement there. So that's what they did. And they talked about 100, maybe 200 people into going. And they said, well, where is this place? And what's it called? Where are you taking us to? He's thinking. He says, it's called Greenland. Well, that, my friends, is probably the first real estate scam on the entire planet, because as we know now today, there isn't a whole lot of Greenland in Greenland. But they came and they started a settlement, and now it's 2026, and Greenland has forever been Greenland ever since, and will always be Greenland. So what does that have to do with me? Well, according to my grandpa, Eric the Red's, it's either his father or his grandfather, and my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, however many greats there was at that generation level, were brothers. So therefore, I'm not a descendant of Eric the Red, but I am related. Would he be my, 25th cousin to the 10th power, 4 times removed? Way, way, way out there. You probably can't even figure it out, but it's a neat story, and I've always identified as I'm related, not to Eric the Red, because I wasn't proud of being a relation of his, but what do they say about your relatives? You can't pick them, they pick you. Does every family have a black sheep in the family? Well, he'd be one of ours. But he had 2 sons and a daughter. And one of his sons, his name was Leif Erikson, the son of Eric. You ever heard of that guy? Yeah. Very, very famous Viking. And Leif grew on to be quite the story. He moved to Norway because he wanted to see where his family came from, and he was born in Iceland. And went back to Norway, became friends of the son of the king of Norway, and he was be what you would call today a mercenary. He was a highly skilled warrior and well sought after to help different kings and queens and that when they had skirmishes or sent out to different areas, and he was the guy they would call to go calm areas down and stuff like that, fight battles. Very skilled warrior. But then during that time, Christianity was growing, and the Vikings were pagans up until the ends of the 900s or 1000. Then they became Christian, and Leif Erikson was one of the early converts. So he became more like a missionary. So he went from being a mercenary to a missionary. And his mission then was to go and spread the word and spread the gospel of Jesus. So he told his friend, the next king of Norway, he was going back to Iceland to spread the word to the Icelandic people and to spread Christianity there, which he did. But then the Viking explorer spirit in him, and he says, you know, hey, where's my papa? And everybody told him, well, he's over in this place now called Greenland. And so he wanted to go over there to see if he was still alive and what's going on over there. And he did. And then he continued on. And this is well documented. A lot of historical facts that Leif Erikson was in North America. Of course, he was in North America the whole time. Greenland is in North America, after all. You're not Europeans. You are Americans. But he continued on, and he was in North America, Newfoundland now, 500 years before Christopher Columbus, who really never stepped foot in North America. He was down in the Caribbean, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, the islands down there. But he was a great explorer in his own right. God bless him. And Columbus Day is a national holiday here in the United States, and his statue is all over. But likewise, and a lot of people don't know this, but anybody that's Nordic, we sure know this, and we celebrate it. And it's a high honor here in the United States. Not too many people have a National Memorial Day named in their honor, but Leif Erikson is one of those people. Leif Erikson Day is an official U.S. Memorial Day, celebrated every year on October 9th. And you can find Leif Erikson statues in many cities in the United States. I know there's a big, huge one in Seattle. I know there's one in Minneapolis, the St. Paul area. There's one in Duluth, Minnesota. I know there's one in Toledo and Cleveland. And I think there's a big one in Boston. And there's a big, big statue of Leif Erikson in Newport News, Virginia, right in front of the U.S. Maritime Museum, to honor American explorers and sailors that have sailed the seven seas. And Leif Erikson, being the great explorer that he was, when you walk up to that museum, that's his statue that you see right in front of the U.S. Maritime Museum. And likewise, just like France gave the United States one of the greatest statues on the entire planet, the Statue of Liberty. Everybody knows the Statue of Liberty. I've had the honor and privilege of being up in the statue 3 times in my lifetime. My grandpa and my grandma both saw the Statue of Liberty when they came to America. So thank you, France, for what a wonderful, wonderful monument that is. No, you can't have it back. It's ours now. And they wouldn't take it back anyways. Thank you, France. But just like France gave us that statue, likewise, the United States of America gave Iceland the statue of Leif Erikson that sits right up top of the hill in Reykjavik, right in front of the big cathedral. And chiseled in stone in the base of that statue, right behind her, says, given to the people of Iceland from the people of the United States of America to commemorate and celebrate the 1000th anniversary of their government, the Althing. And that was in 1930. So just in less than 4 years, that statue will be 100 years old. And yes, I have my picture standing right in front of that statue because I'm so proud to tell everybody that that man is my cousin. As many generations ago and removed as it is, I've always referred to him as Cousin Leif Erikson. And there's a U.S. postage stamp that's been issued in his honor, and there's a solid sterling silver coin, U.S. $1 coin, that was issued in his honor, and his profile is on the front of the coin, and on the back is him in his longboat, and it says Leif Erikson, founder of the New World, and that was in 2000 was the year that coin was stamped and printed and minted. And so that's an incredible, beautiful coin. You can Google search that. Just put U.S. commemorative coin of Leif Erikson, and you'll see it. And I know now that Leif Erikson is buried in Greenland. And I know that in, I don't know, just within the last 20 years, a statue of Leif Erikson was erected in his honor in South Greenland. And they don't know the exact burial site, where his gravesite is, but they have it. This is where he lived. This was where the village was, and these are the grounds that he walked on. I think that should be a national park. What do you think? If Greenland ever comes in the family, it very likely could very well be a new U.S. national park. And we have many national parks in territories around the world. Yep, wouldn't be the first. If that's what you want, Greenlanders. And that's one of the reasons why Greenland has been on my mind, because I'd love to come and walk those grounds that Leif Erikson himself walked on. That's high on my bucket list. I hope that happens soon, because my days on the planet are numbered. I know that for a fact. I'm wearing the heart monitor. Yeah, there it is. Monitoring my TikToker. Everything's going to be all right. I just got a little thing going on there with my pulse going real low. They're trying to figure out why that is. But I feel great. So don't let that bother you. It's just a bitch getting old sometimes, huh? Got my new shoulder over here. I'm going to get a new shoulder here. I'm going to have a new knee over here, new knee there, new hips. Thank God for modern medicine and what they do. So, Greenland. Huge decision. I wanted you to know the facts about what the United States is all about, because we're not fractured. We are truly united. We're God-loving, fearing people, and we want what is right, not what is wrong. And just like what's going on in Iran today, and I am disappointed. I'm so disappointed that our allies, our friends, NATO members, and the ones who are going to benefit the most of what's going on, other than the Iranian people themselves, God bless them, look what you're going to benefit from not having to live under their craziness and holding the whole world hostage, but especially Europe. You're going to be the biggest benefactor by having normalcy put back into that country and not be a threat to Europe and all your oil is going through there, and for the EU countries to refuse our military planes to land on your air bases or our ships to use your ports. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And I'm so disappointed that they did that, because of all that we have done for you and defend your freedom. And why in the world do we have 50,000 troops still in Europe to this day defending you if you can't even assist and help us and participate in what was the right thing to do? And I don't care what you see on the news. That's just their viewpoint. But if you talk to the people of Iran, I have talked to many of my friends who are Iranians. They pray every day that God, please don't quit until there's a regime change. They're so prayerful and hopeful that they get rid of the ayatollahs they live in fear. Just imagine if you walked out your door and you wanted to say something about your government and know that you'd get a bullet in your head if you did that. Just like that young wrestler, was 19 years old, world champion wrestler, and he expressed his happiness that the United States was in there finally trying to get rid of these people. And they wanted their freedom. And what ended up to him, was he shot or hung from a bridge? I don't know. One a public execution. It's awful. Just awful. And I pray for them people. And my friends said they hope and pray that this will end with a complete regime change, because the people, they want the same thing that everybody in the world wants: peace, prosperity, safety, food on the table, a good job, a good home to lay your head at night and wake up in the morning and know that everything's going to be the same tomorrow as it was the night before when you laid your head on your pillow. Isn't that what everybody, every one of us wants on the entire planet? I don't care if you live in Russia, Ukraine, China, Africa, even here in America. That's what we all hope and pray for. That's what we want. And I think we got a really, really good gig here in America. And Greenland, the door's wide open for you. You can choose that path. And if you do, can you imagine what the celebration would be like? It'd be through the roof. And I'd be coming to the party. And to me, it just makes, it's common sense. It's logistical sense. I mean, look at the globe again. You got Alaska over here. You got Greenland right here. Canada in the middle. Mainland U.S. down here. Two great bookends to the North American continent. It's like it was meant to be. And I mentioned about all the other states for a reason, Greenland. If you make this decision, you're not giving up who you are. You're not giving up your identity. You will forever and always be Greenlanders, and so proud of your heritage and all the benefits that come with that are uniquely different from all the other 50 states. That will never change. You will forever and always be Greenlanders. You know, there is another territory that was a former possession of Denmark. And if you did your history lessons and paid attention in your school days, what am I talking about? It's a territory and a possession that the United States has today that was a former territory of Denmark. You know the answer to that question? Everybody's scratching their head. Well, here it is. Danish West Indies. Yeah. What are they known as today? The U.S. Virgin Islands, USVI. I've been there several times in my lifetime. We'll go in there again next year. We'll be down there in June of 2027 for 10 days. And it's beautiful. And I've talked to the people down there, and they are so grateful and thankful and blessed to be part of the U.S. of A. And they are American citizens. And I truly, truly believe that where they are today, compared to where they would be had they continued to be a part of Denmark, they're much better off today. And we're grateful and thankful to have them in there. But we purchased them from Denmark. And I would have to go back and look at what the money is, but it was big money, especially for back then. It'd be equivalent to, in today's dollar, billions. And so Greenland, if you wanted to become part of the family, we shouldn't have to buy Greenland from Denmark and pull the rug out from under your feet and that not be what you want. And I can't see us doing that. And it would be an awful thing for Denmark to even consider selling Greenland to anybody, let alone just the United States, if that wasn't your intentions and your destiny and future that you decide for yourself. You should be the one to decide that, not Denmark. Everything will be fine with Denmark. We'll still be great, wonderful friends and partners with Denmark. Our relatives won't change. I got a lot of relatives in Denmark. We love Denmark, and everything's going to be fine, and fine for Greenland. But it has to be your decision. But if that's what you want, all that money that would go to Denmark, that should be going to you people. And there'll be tons more money than that will benefit Greenlanders. I can't imagine the opportunity that comes in to Greenland the day that comes. And you can have free and open trade to the greatest trading partner you would ever want in the entire planet, the United States of America. You know, in my other videos, you'll see me drink Icelandic glacial water. I love that water whenever I have to buy bottled water. And they sell that right down here, right down within a mile of my house in our local convenience store, just down the end of the street. You can buy Icelandic glacial water. And I'm not saying this to make it bad for that company in Iceland. I may have relatives and cousins like that work in that company. I hope they do. And we'll still buy that. But guess what? Greenland, I could see Greenlandic glacial waters. Wouldn't that be so cool? There's a business for somebody if they want to start that up. And you don't have to go through any of your other products. You have open trade because you're one of us. That's one of the perks, one of the benefits. No tariffs, no nothing. Just be no different than anything made here in West Virginia sold to any one of the territories or states in the United States. That's why it's so great in this country. And we all benefit from each other. And you will too. Every single university and college in North America and the United States, doors are wide open for any of your children to come here to get educated, or right there in Greenland, we would have the best medical, everything you can think of is available to you. There's so many benefits. So I thank every day my grandfather and my grandmother, and on my mother's side too. She has French and German and Finnish. We have, my mother's side, there's some pretty good hunk of Finnish, and they're Samis flowing through my veins. You know, I did the Ancestry DNA thing. I'm 87% Nordic. Of course, I already knew that before I even took the test. And I only did it because a friend talked me into it. But Greenland, I'm proud to be an indigenous Sami. I know that the Inuit are the majority people in Greenland. You can be so proud of your heritage and history. You're not giving that up. That's who you will be forever. Yeah. When you look at the license plates for Guam, you can Google search that. What does it say? Guam, USA. They're proud to be Americans. Look up the Virgin Islands, former Denmark territory. It says USVI, United States Virgin Islands. Yep. I just see a win-win. I got to wrap it up here because it's getting pretty windy in Greenland. I hope and pray for the best for all of you. So if any of you are watching this and you think it's worthy enough to share with your fellow Greenlanders, please do that. If you want to comment, I'll look at all those comments and I'll get back to you. I'll read every single one of them. I can't wait to see the day, whatever's going to happen. I hope I'm still on the planet. And if I am, and if you come into the family, I'm coming to the party. I wouldn't miss that for the world. So, God bless America, but man, oh man, God, please bless Greenland and the decision that's on your plate. And we'll respect and honor that decision. But you don't have anything to fear from America. You truly, truly don't. Come, see for yourself in your own eyes. If you have the wherewithal and the means and ability to do it, we would love to have you come. But that's what I love about YouTube. I love watching the YouTube videos. I thought I knew a lot about Greenland, but I really didn't until I started. You can't click on Greenland on YouTube and you don't come up with Q, right? You know who I'm talking about. Anybody who's researched Greenland. So thank you, Q, for doing what you do. You sure have enlightened my eyes as to what's going on in Greenland. And I think the best is yet to come. But it has to be your choice, your decision. So think about that. And then do the right thing for not only yourselves, but your children and your grandchildren and generations to come, just like my grandparents did. And I'm so grateful and thankful for what they did. Oh yeah, one last thing. See, I could go on forever. Greenland, you know, yeah, we have a U.S. military base in Greenland. I forget what it's called right now. It escapes my head, but let's just call it Space Base Greenland. You know, the newest branch of the U.S. military, the U.S. Space Force. And can you imagine what the future holds in store in outer space? And Greenland is a strategic partner in that. And yeah, space-based Greenland. Thank you, Greenlanders, for being such great partners and allies and friends. And we'll be friends forever. We truly will. Yep. So, Greenland, thank you. Thank you for sticking with us so long. I'm sorry I got so windy. I even have more floating in my head, but I got to cut it off here. So, just do what you feel is right in your heart. And don't have fear. God will be on your side. That's why I'm so glad on every one of our coins it says, God bless America. And in God we trust. And our national motto, which on every one of our coins, was written into our Declaration of Independence right from the big get-go, E pluribus unum. And that's Latin. But I don't know, they wanted to have that in Latin, but it translates into of many comes one. We're many people of many different cultures, but we're united together to form one, the greatest country that has ever been and ever will be on the entire planet. And it's all yours if you choose that path. So God bless you. God bless America. God bless Greenland. You'll be Greenlanders forever. I just want to switch torch, and this is what I get to look at every day. God bless the United States. I'm proud to be a Viking. I'm proud to be a Sami, but I'm super proud to be an American. Thank you, Greenlanders. God bless you. Goodbye for now.